Welcome to Chaos Divided, a podcast exploring the hobby, the game, and the lore of Warhammer 40k. We're your hosts, Nurgle Snurgle and BlushingNoiseMarine, and today we're talking about the setting and lore of Warhammer 40k, or why you don't need to read 400 books to enjoy Warhammer. And today's quote is, "Wisdom is the beginning of fear." And that's from the Warhammer 40k Compendium.
I feel like that was a good start to this. I feel like, it sets the tone for Warhammer. It's...
What is Warhammer?
Understanding is usually not a good thing in a universe filled with that many horrors.
Mm-hmm. How many horrors do you think there are in this universe?
In, the universe of 40k?
Yeah.
I think it's been said before, we don't even know how, messed up the Tyranids are. We don't even know how, I think it was in some of the earlier codexes that, it talked about how we hadn't even seen the bulk of the Hive fleets yet. We just seen kind of the reaching tendrils of it.
Mm-hmm. It was actually a conversation I had with Blood God the other day, and it was a question: had there ever been a perspective in the books of a Tyranid? He said there was maybe one or two times where how one lictor goes onto the ship and it kind of explains it going through the vents and getting to a certain area and essentially acting like a suicide bomber as a Tyranid, and it's just getting the information from the hive mind. So yeah, the lore just doesn't stop in Warhammer 40k, right?
It's pretty big. So yeah, it's a hodgepodge of science fiction. From the earliest days, I think they drew inspiration from, across kind of science fiction to create this grim, dark, bizarre, weird setting that also had these fantastical elements because they were starting from a root of bringing Warhammer fantasy to a science fiction landscape. And then over the last almost 40 years, they've just kept digging deeper and deeper and making it bigger and bigger to this point that, I don't know, it almost feels like an ocean of lore.
Yeah, kind of going back 40 years? Warhammer's been around 40 years.
Well, I think fantasy's been around 40 years, and then I would assume they were working on 40k, for a couple of years before it got released. So,
hot dog.
Yeah.
And to kind of tell the audience as well, just kind of our background with the lore knowledge. Mine's very minimal, and BlushingNoiseMarine, how many books have you read?
Read a few. I'm reading The Crimson King right now, which I am unfortunately struggling with, which is sad because it's a Thousand Sons novel, and the Thousand Sons and the Horus Heresy are actually really cool, and they have some great books. And this one is it's about Ahriman trying to put Magnus back together after Leman Russ breaks his back.
Okay.
And it's just the only part that's getting me through it is Lucius is in it and is amazing in it. But it's just it's plodding on in a way that I'm not loving, which is kind of a thing. I think we're going to talk about it a little later, but the Horus Heresy is there's a lot of books and they're not all created equally.
Okay, I see.
But I think that's I don't know, I'm 40 some books into the Horus Heresy. I've read Caiaphas Cain, which is so much fun. The Caiaphas Cain novels are just a joy to read. That's just such a well-written character and just a ridiculous setting for it. And I've been reading the codexes and rule books for a while now, so I've got a little bit of a background.
Notches in your belt.
Well, you know what? Honestly, Warhammer is so big, I don't even know if I would say that I have a notch in my belt because it's. When
just
we say
drop in the
400
ocean.
Books, that's probably a conservative estimate.
Yeah, because if you've only read 40, then that's only 10% of what's out there.
Well, I think Horus Heresy alone is almost 50 some books.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've done the Siege on Terra, which is another like 10 or 15. So like even just to read the whole Horus Heresy, you're pushing almost 70 books.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Black Library is a prolific publisher when it comes to these things. But I think that underscores kind of the importance of how big it is, because you don't have to read it all.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick and choose. You don't really need to like dig down into all of it. Like you can if you want to, but it's almost so big that if you're not successful, like that's not really a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Warhammer, it's almost to the level of like, have you read every like DC or Marvel comic book? Like no,
True.
nobody has.
I'm sure there's someone out there.
Literally everyone.
They can message us. They can email us. I've read all the comics.
You know what? If you have read all of them in either DC or Marvel, we will dedicate an episode to interview you, because that would be awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you said your lore experience is a little limited, but I think we all experience the lore differently. So what does kind of your little corner of it look like?
Especially in the beginning of it all, it looks like me comfy in the bed, Blood God sitting next to me, talking to me like he's reading me a bedtime story and telling me all about Nurgle's Garden and Beasts of Nurgle. So that's how it felt like, and I would just ask questions and I would get more intrigued by what he was telling me. And that was pretty much, I'm lucky in the fact that I have someone like that next to me, or someone I can ask questions, because he's listened to all of the audiobooks and he loves the Horus Heresy. So that's my corner of lore, just kind of like through the third party, where I just listen to other people, or I've just picked up on little stories here and there. Again, I'm starting to read the Horus Heresy, and because I was never much of a reader, and I've grown to appreciate how this book is written, and it's beautifully descriptive. I found that listening to some war music on the hill of Citadel while reading Horus Heresy really puts you in the mood.
Those first few books are really good.
Mm-hmm. It really captivates you.
They're some of my favorite parts. Is kind of that first 8-book arc of the Horus Heresy. So I hope you're enjoying it at least. Yes,
very much so. But yeah, that's pretty much my corner. Just it's pretty small. It's just I don't really I don't research on the lore or with the codex. I haven't really read any of the extra stories to go with it. But I appreciate it from afar.
But that's okay, and that's you still get to engage with it in kind of the way you want to, and I think that's an important point. Like we talked about last week about painting. Like painting is not my strong suit, but I still like it, and I can still engage with it in my own way. And that's also the beauty of the lore, is you can do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like with you saying that you can appreciate someone else's work and dedication into that. I also appreciate other people's dedications or their artwork in the lore, because I'm going to go off on a little tangent because I'm really excited about it. But there's a guy, I really need to find him on Instagram, and perhaps you guys can let us know. He took the Horus Heresy and he flipped it And he made it so that the Chaos Primarchs were actually loyalists, and the loyalists were actually Chaos. And I appreciated that art form so much. It was, what was it called? Oh, I'm gonna save it for the question period because I'm gonna really think about it. But I'll come back with that. It's something heresy, but we'll come back to that. But like, just that appreciation that someone can take the lore that's out there from the Black Library, from the GW, and just make it their own. Like, that's just beautiful.
And I think that's where like the lore intersects and interacts, is that you can like take the lore and take like a profound love of it. I saw a photo today of a Demon Prince Perturabo someone had done.
Oh,
so they'd kit bashed the like pre-ascension Perturabo and gave him this like demonic elements, and it looked really cool. But you have to have almost a love of Perturabo and Iron Warriors to kind of envision what that looks like and to build that. And that's where kind of we've been calling them the pillars, but that's kind of how like lore interacts with the rest of the game and the hobby, is that it's that context that allows you to kind of invigorate your own creativity.
Yeah, like you said, the pillars. Like, we've got the 3 pillars: the game, the painting, and the lore. And the lore is kind of like the sticky tack to it all, just keeping it together.
Well, and it can really keep you going for a long time. Like, the way I got kind of into the lore was actually going away from the game and the hobby. I went almost 10 years without playing Warhammer. But
you read it?
Yeah, that's how I kind of kept in touch with what was going on, and really the heresy was kind of a big thing for me. There was, for a period of time, I was keeping up. Obviously, I'm behind at this point, but reading those books as they came out was kind of a way for me to kind of keep that love of Warhammer kind of close without having the time to engage with the hobby or the game.
Do you remember your first like feeling of being sucked in to the Horus Heresy or the lore?
I think I was like sucked in from the first book.
The first sentence, you're like, I'm in.
I read I'd read Caiaphas Cain already, so I already kind of like gotten an appreciation. And I think Dan Abnett wrote Horus Rising, right? And I've read some of his other books, and he's a pretty approachable author, so I figured it was going to be pretty good. So Garviel Loken is kind of a cool character. And just like how big they even started it from, like the Horus Heresy gets huge and intertwined. Like there's, at this point, there's probably like 1,000 characters in that series, but it starts off pretty big, and like, Loken gives you kind of that like singular point to explore from, and they just keep setting up, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have this kind of like super small viewpoint of this gigantic thing, and it kind of like leads you into the whole heresy. Yeah,
because it doesn't start, he's not a Primarch, he's kind of just like going up the ranks that I've noticed in the first couple of chapters, and I liked how they described him.
Yeah, like he's almost like he's an outsider in the sense that he's new to the like upper command, and like he's still, I think in like the first few chapters he still describes like he can like barely talk in front of Horus because he's just in like such awe of him.
Or he like or even how like some of like the servants, they ask about Horus, and it's like, well, then you don't really know who Horus is if you're asking those type of questions.
Yeah. So like it's kind of a way to like lead you into this gigantic thing, and I think they did a good job of like making it approachable. Because like by the time you're 25 books in and you've like touched all of the legions and interacted with all of the Primarchs, and like it's just huge. I mean, the best ones are the ones that don't really deal with the Primarchs directly. Like, there's a book written with from like Corax's
Mm-hmm.
perspective, and it's called Corax. And
But it's not about Corax?
No, it is, but it's probably one of the worst ones.
Ooh, hot take from BlushingNoiseMarine.
But part of the issue is that it's written from the perspective of a Primarch, and like you can't write a Primarch differently. Like
he's just the best of the best in this type of field, kind of thing.
Well, he just ends up being kind of whiny. Like it's like there's a lot of like reminiscing about like growing up on this like prison planet, and it's like, yeah, this is like sad, but you're also a demigod, so like. Yeah. Like, it's a lot of, like, I was so scared for the 3 years before I became, like, this giant monster that just, like, destroyed my captors. And you're like, well, to an extent, it's hard to feel like you were powerless because you're, like, this warp-spawned, like, meta-human, like, monstrosity by the age of, like, 12.
Mm-hmm. So you had, like, an ugly duckling kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, you know, he like lands in this like prison moon and he's like treated poorly and then leads a rebellion and it's successful because he's a Primarch. Like he's like, you know, like a giga stealth boy who just wins all of the fights. So it's, you know, so it's like having his inner monologue almost takes away from like the Raven Guard. Because, like, there are some good Raven Guard characters, but, like, Corax is not one of them.
But it's interesting that he kept on that very human emotion.
Yeah, he's one of the more, like... I think, like, him, Vulcan, Angron, and Magnus are like, the more, the human.
Tortured, but...
Yeah, I mean, Angron... You know what, though? If you read, like, the lore of Angron is, like, he's super sentimental. Like, he's the most humanistic of them.
Crazy.
And like Corax is the kind of that Conrad Kurz element where it's like he cares about some people.
The close people.
Yeah, like Corax cared about the like other prisoners in the like the moon prison. But then he like has a hard time sympathizing with like everyone else. Which like
So what got you started on the Horus Heresy train, I guess? Like what introduced you to it?
I literally just bought Horus Rising because I was like, I want to keep interacting with Warhammer.
But, like, I guess, what was your introduction to all of that? Like, did you see it at a bookstore, or did you see it at a Games Workshop?
I mean, it was probably at a bookstore, and just like, ooh, look at that. But, I mean, this was also, like, you know, I started reading them within, like, when, like, maybe the 5th or 6th book was out. So it was, like... At the time, like the Horus Heresy was a big mystery. Like it wasn't like we knew. Like reading the Horus Heresy books was like how you uncovered the heresy.
Wow.
So like it's kind of that like up until that point, like 40K didn't really talk about the heresy. Like and there were no Primarchs in 40K either. So like there was no connection to these, like no connection to the legions, no connection to like any of it really, other than like whispers and like references.
Like was it 40K and then 30K?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so like the Horus Heresy novels are kind of what kicked off like the Horus Heresy game. So like, you know, at the time, like it was that, you know, you knew who the Primarchs were because they were like in codexes and talked about. But they weren't characters that you interacted with, and they didn't do things because they were either in the warp or dead or missing or, you know. So
what are some important things we should consider with the 40K lore?
That's such a hard question. Consider with it. I think the big thing, which is also part of what makes it exciting, is that especially with 40K. The Imperium is the source of like the lore. Like we interact with the universe of 40K from the perspective of the Imperium.
Right, and it's Lorgar's book that they follow too, right?
Within 40K?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's like, you know, like if you read a codex, it's like excerpts from like the Tau codexes will have like like inquisitorial like reference sheets on them, because it's like it's what the like Ordo Xenos thinks the Tau are. And then like the
Interesting.
and then like the Space Marines and that, it's all like it's what the like Ordo Administratum thinks like that chapter is, and it's what that like what they think that Primarch is. So like a lot of the codex and like rulebook stuff comes from this like unreliable perspective of like the Imperium.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, is it propaganda? You don't know. Like the reason.
Yeah. Like that's what the Imperium is. Like that's what I see from a chaos side. They're all propaganda. Like
it's like a massive evil theocracy. And so that's why like it's an unreliable narrator. So like everything you see is like what is being presented, not necessarily what's true. So like Warhammer 40k as a setting doesn't have canon. Like if you're a Star Wars fan or a Star Trek fan, like those are very established settings that have, you know, canon that needs to be followed, and there's a course of events. Whereas like we don't even necessarily know when a story takes place with 40k. You know, you might be reading a story in a codex that it takes place in the 37th millennium, and they don't tell you that, and it's like left intentionally vague.
Just on a sidebar for maybe the new people that don't quite know canon, what is that?
So it's like the established lore. So like if you look at Star Wars, like the movies are kind of that established canon, that established like story. Yeah. Okay. So you know you can't, when you're writing new parts of that story, you don't want to contradict what has been said in the past.
Right, like Darth Vader will never be Yoda.
Yeah, and like you know, red
maybe
lightsabers
in the fan fiction,
are
but like
yeah, but like a good Jedi shouldn't have a red lightsaber. Like the little details like that. Whereas, you know, 40k is very just like everyone is everything.
Yeah, except orc vehicles have to be red.
They should be red.
They should be red.
Unless they have guns on them.
They're recommended to be red. Orc recommended.
Unless you want them to be sneaky, and then they need to be purple.
What if you put red underneath and purple on top?
Ooh, I think you just did orc science.
It's orc conception.
There we go. And if you paint the guns yellow, you would have like the most Gorkanist vehicle ever.
Yeah. What's blue? Lucky?
Is blue like fightier? I know yellow is more DACA.
Yeah.
But I don't know what blue is.
I think it's lucky, isn't it?
Is it lucky? But why would you need to be lucky when you've got Gork and Mork? You're brutal and cunning.
Oh, there you go. And green's just like the best, right? Is the meanest and the mightiest.
Well, because Orcs is the strongest.
Yeah.
Orcs is the bestest. But to talk about Orcs, so do you know what Orcs are?
They're fungus.
Yeah, they're psychic mushrooms.
Yeah. Psychedelic mushrooms.
Right? They're just like a giant race of mushrooms. So to like, you know, sometimes you'll see people talk about 40k as this like big serious setting, and then it's like, but orcs are psychic mushrooms. Like it's not serious. Yeah,
and then there's like the thoughts of, or I've heard people talk about like, well, what about female orcs? They're just a fungus.
They don't have gender.
They're a fungi.
They don't. That's bad.
I'll take a bad one.
But all of this to say that, you know, I think the part of the fun of exploring the lore is this like ever-changing, you know, kind of reality of like exploring it. Like you're really, you know, every new book and every new codex, every new rulebook kind of like shifts the story a little bit more. And I mean, since 7th, that was kind of the first big like progression of the story. So before that, it was like a stagnant universe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So 7th was the end of that. So that's why like that whole like the whole Imperium Nihilus, like that was a whole big like the lore now changes and like the universe changes because it used to be like you would explore things and it would be kind of like uncovering the past because there's kind of this whole like the setting is 40k, we know the heresy happens at 30k, and then there's 10,000 years where the Imperium just rots.
Yeah,
and that's kind of
and
where
becomes what the Emperor did not want it to become.
Literally, he was like, "Hey, let's not do this thing," and then they're like, "100%, that's what we're gonna do."
Yeah. So you said do that thing, right? Right?
They're like, "I'm not a god. There are no gods. Let's be atheist."
Religion
And they're
needs
just like,
to be gone, and don't worship me as a god. And
guys, stop empowering the chaos gods.
Exactly.
They're like, "But what if you were a god?" And he's like, "No." And then dies almost.
You think he's alive in there?
Well, he is alive because he like communicates with people.
True, I guess so. Yeah.
He like sends like visions, and he's almost like he's kind of like the Sigmar of 40k, where he's this like god of order almost. Like he does have like that's why like like the sisters. Like that whole like faith thing actually works because like the Emperor is also this like giant psychic conduit, and like their belief in him translates into actual things happening because they believe in him so hard, and he like is a psychic force.
So he's like the Gork and Mork for the sisters.
It's like the Gork and Mork for humanity.
True.
He's like he's effectively a god.
He's been made a god, yeah.
Yeah, like so like his whole story is that like in like ancient Earth, all of the psychic potential for humanity was put into this one kid who was the Emperor. And he's this like immortal being. And up until like the birth of Slaanesh, he holds all of the psychic potential of humanity in him. And then like the warp storms created by Slaanesh's birth basically caused psychers to break out across humanity, and which then just like empowers all of the chaos gods.
Oh, it was all from Slaanesh.
Yeah, so it's like the warp
storms.
Like, the Eldar were part of that too. That was they were all into that. But yeah, it's the like warp effect of the warp storms from Slaanesh's birth that lead to like psychic influences like mutating humanity into psychers. Because up until that point, like the Emperor was that like sole carrier of humanity's psychicness.
Until Slaanesh.
Well, it wasn't Slaanesh directly. It was just like the Eye of Terror opening. Like when that happened, it like spread warp storms throughout the galaxy. So. Okay. Yeah, like it eventually calmed down into the Eye of Terror, but that's like, what's it called? It's like the afterbirth of Slaanesh is what it's called.
Ew.
Yeah, well, Slaanesh is gross.
More so than Nurgle, apparently.
Slaanesh is way grosser than Nurgle.
True. From what I've heard.
Nurgle's like, decay, but like Nurgle was originally like a god of life and death, whereas like Slaanesh is like the perversion of love. Like what's messier than like depravity and so no, Slaanesh is someone you don't want to invite to a party, or you do want to invite to a party, one way or the other.
Either way, they're showing up.
Right. And it's gonna be the time they want it to be.
Yeah.
But this is part of like the fun of the lore is like exploring these like times. Like so I was actually reading about this. The creation of Tzeentch, Khorne, and Nurgle actually like their creation and like becoming sentient coincides with like the Crusades, the Black Plague, and what was Tzeentch? I think
like Egyptian or
no, it was I think it was like the like post like the Renaissance.
Oh, okay.
But like before the Renaissance, like when there was just like this mass chaos and like like the splintering of the Catholic Church, like in the 40K setting, just like the aftershocks of like their creation, like with the Crusades, it was like Khorne's made everyone so angry they just like went to kill each other. Nurgle was like, you know, Nurgle becoming sentient released so much like plague energy into the galaxy that, you know, plagues just rose up all throughout Earth.
Yeah.
And that's what caused the Black Deaths. So it's, you know, their Earth, like humanity didn't cause their creation, but their creation like affected humanity. So, fun fact.
It was just like the collectiveness of energy that just erupted.
Yeah, like it was like they became sentient and like around the like turn of the first millennium.
So they weren't around before.
No.
Interesting.
And it was also partly due to like orcs and Eldar becoming more prevalent throughout the galaxy because they were psychically attuned.
And was that roughly at the same time as like the birth of the Emperor?
No, that was after the birth of the Emperor.
Oh,
so the Emperor was born like...
Oh, he's the eldest of, well, quote unquote, God.
Well, no, like Cain, like Gork and Mork would be older.
Oh.
Like the Eldar gods, Gork and Mork would be older than the Emperor.
Yeah.
Well, the old ones created the orcs and the Eldar to fight the Necrons.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a whole mess.
Well, that was even like the Necron lore was changed. So like, and this is what I mean. Like it's like it never stops, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. If you think you know it in one way, guess again.
We're just geeking out about lore things at this point. I'm having a ball. But some ways, I guess, if you're kind of new to the lore and you want to get into it, some of the easy ways to do it, even just reading the core rulebook, like the first part of that is all lore. And also usually a lot of very pretty pictures.
Yes. I like the pictures.
They are beautiful. Actually, honestly, the latest Chaos Space Marine Codex has both some of like the most fun lore and some great stories, and then also just like it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's
they did a great job even with the cover art for 9th edition. All the books, like the colors, and
I would say Tau was a little lacking, but they just put the same. It's a new painting of the same painting of a crisis suit that has been on like around since like the 3rd edition.
Sorry. I have the Chaos Demon one is like of a nurgling pretty much telling a Sisters of Battle to stop.
Which is good. No, that's another good one. No, there's some good ones out there, but no, Tau did not get the art love this edition.
Oops.
Oopsie. You know what? There's some really cool Tau art, but the Tau art is like aesthetically interesting as like the Eldar or Chaos by any stretch of the imagination. So, like you get what you get. But yeah, so codexes are a huge way to get like the specific lore for a faction. So usually each one will kind of evolve the story a little bit. So like reading like the 9th edition codex, it kind of explains, you know, what has changed with like Imperium Nihilus, and like they move the story forward 400 years. So like what has changed relative to like older codexes. So you can kind of see how your faction like adapted and like what they've been up to. Like the Tau Codex talks about like the 5th sphere expansion. Like Chaos talks about, you know, what the Imperium Nihilus is and like what the war bands are doing and what the legions are doing and like what Abaddon is up to.
And
so,
now it's like the birth of Vashtor and Angron's coming back and L. Johnson woken up, and that's
what the Arcs of Omen. So like each of those books that had like the boarding party rules also had that same type of codex like lore section that told those stories of Vashtor, and I really hope Vashtor gets a little bit more like love, because I feel like
they like the bedtime story that Jared told me about Vashtor. I really enjoyed, and I hope they do more. I like the idea that he wants to be a chaos god and he wants to work with Abaddon, but obviously he's not going to be a chaos god, but he's going to work for it, and I like that.
He's going to do the work.
Yeah. With his hammer.
I feel like Vashtor got overshadowed by like the lion and Angron.
Oh, 100%, yeah. But they didn't really have, like, if he had his own codex, maybe, or like he's in a weird spot right now. He's just kind of like floating in the abyss.
Well, I thought they were gonna make like Dark Mechanicum.
I thought so too.
And then they just were like, no, Chaos Space Marines, and I was like, what?
I kind of agree with that, only that he should kind of look after the demon engines kind of thing.
Yeah, but I thought it was going to be more of a like I get that side of it, but there's not a ton of demon engines.
No, but I'd like to see him maybe work with Perturabo, maybe Iron Warriors, maybe a Perturabo Demon Prince. Just putting that out
Not before Fulgrim GW.
Yeah.
Fulgrim first. Last of the like monogod Primarchs better be 10th.
Better be.
Better be. I will go to England and have words.
Do you know who to speak to?
I don't care. I will just stand.
Oh no! You had to go talk to James' workshop.
I will find James' workshop personally and share my opinions.
Make him sign the dotted line. We'll make Emperor's Children and Fulgrim.
Right? Okay, but Noise Marines also need some like reworks. Like, come on. There used to be
not just one special model. It has to be like the full unit.
There used to be a Blastmaster Hellbrute. That would be super cool to bring back. It was like this like giant Blastmastery dreadnought thing. That would be awesome. Like, there's so many things. Come on, just do it.
Just make them all look like Kiss models, or give them a concert.
Yes, anything. I will take anything at this point.
More Nurglings?
And then you have it. Well, I'm not going to say there's too many Nurglings to you, but like, yeah. But what's the Slanesh version of a Nurgling?
You need that. You don't have one,
right? There isn't one. Like, actually.
I'm trying to really think. Like
Khorne has like the little like war puppy things.
Yeah, and then Zeech has screamers, and there's like those little tiny screamers that you've seen like on the Psyker.
Slash has demonettes, but that's not like, that's more like a bloodletter.
Like maybe baby goats, like maybe fainting goats.
Just little satyrs, just like just like a little disc full of satyrs, just like munching on bones or something.
Yeah, we're making it right now.
Cute little goat faces. That'd be fun.
Any 3D sculptors out there, you can take this idea.
There we go. Little baby Slanesh tears. And then we can't talk about the lore without talking about Black Library. So the Horus Rising is like the first book you've read.
Not fully, but getting there.
I believe in you. I know you're gonna get through it because it's so good. And then it leads into the next one and the next one, and then all of a sudden you're an Isfan, and it just never ends. But outside of the heresy, like, there's so many different ways to interact with Black Library. Focusing on the factions you already care about, like there's Necron books, there's Tau books, there's the Devastation of Baal if you like Tyranids and or Blood Angels. Like, there's ways of finding kind of your part of it.
That's probably one of like the most famous stories I hear about is the Devastation of Baal. Like, that seems to be like the classic story of Warhammer.
I know, it's on my list to read because it sounds good. Not that I love the Blood Angels, but I feel like I've heard enough people talk about how good it is that I want to get into it. And then just kind of some of those classics. So like Gaunt's Ghosts is one of those like classic loved Warhammer series. Caiaphas Cain is a joy to read, and you get to see a bunch of other factions kind of through that lens of like an Imperial Guard commissar.
Okay.
Which is a lot of fun. Like they encounter demons on multiple occasions. Actually, there's one scene from Caiaphas Cain. He like is standing in a street, and it's during a Tau invasion, and a broadside suit like walks like onto the street and shoots its railgun at a bus full of people.
Whoa!
And it's just like he's just like watches as like this hole appears on the front and back, and then like this 40-foot blood smear comes out the back of the bus from like the railgun shot, and you're just like, damn, I love broadsides.
You may like broadsides.
I was like, that is so cool. Like, but that was the first time I'd ever seen like a broadside described, and I was like, that's sick.
And they must describe things in height too, right?
Yeah, like they're huge. Like, especially with like anytime it's like a guard perspective, it's like just a regular human, and it's like you get the feeling of like, when they start describing like how big a space marine is.
Or like, even like the description of like a beast of Nurgle. Like for me, when I hear they're just the puppies of Nurgle, I think of like, oh, little pets, but no, they're actually like...
They're like 15 feet tall and like...
Yeah.
It'd be like if a
so
house was chasing you.
With an open mouth.
Right? Like, it was the same thing as, like, like a space marine would be like, to be tackled by a space marine would be like being tackled by, like, a commercial fridge. Like, they're not just, like, 8.5 feet tall, they're also, like, 4 feet wide. Oh. And especially, like, once they're in their power armor and everything,
True.
they're proportionally larger in every way. Like, it talks about, like, their hands just kind of, like, cover, like, a human's shoulder. Like they're an order of magnitude larger. Like it's not just that like when you think okay, they're a couple feet taller, but like it's not like when you picture like an 8-foot tall basketball player. Like it's like if it's like if 3 of them stood beside each other is like what you're looking at. So, and that's kind of where like the guard books get cool, because you get to actually like see from your own like perspective. You can kind of see how humanity fits into 40K
and how they see them as.
Yeah, and how absolutely screwed they all are.
Oh no.
Well, like,
they know that.
An Imperial Guard regiment versus like a Tyranid invasion. The odds are not on the guard side.
Are they as fanatic as like say a cultist or a sister?
No, they're just like people.
They don't want to be there.
Most of them don't know.
But they're just the Call of Duty. Well,
it's more so like large population planets, part of their like imperial tithe is soldiers. So they just have to send so many of their like young people to join the guard. So like a lot of it, they're mostly like conscripts. Like some sign up, but not all of them do. And then if you manage to survive long enough, you like can have a career in it. But like your average guardsman is just like,
or you don't have.
If you're from some like hive world where there's 1 trillion people on a planet and you've been living in squalor, at least like the guard feeds you and gives you a bed.
True, gives you structure.
Yeah. So no, it's one of those like your average human's life is not great.
Fun.
But that's where you get to see. Well, you know what? This is part of the thing with 40K is it's like it's a cautionary tale.
Yeah. Like, yes.
If 40K is like the worst of humanity pushed to 11, like 38,000 years in the future, it's like if we had such advanced technology, like how can we hate the most?
Yeah, so like don't look at 40K lore as like, oh, there's possibilities and dreams. It's just like no, that's out the window. This is like this is not like a Star Trek future where you're like, oh, but things could get better. You're like, no. 40K is like if everything went wrong forever for so long that it just can't go any wronger. Oh no, we're going wronger and wronger and wronger.
Like you're at the point where it's just like, hey, sometimes demons show up because we're so fucked.
Mm-hmm. They just show up. Sweet.
Like there's just like your average human life is like meaningless in the face of just like how bad things are. And then like even if all of the enemies don't get to you, like the Imperium itself is awful.
Yeah.
Like if you could,
like the Grey Knights. I don't know how people think they're the good guys.
the Imperium is not the good guys.
No. But then like so in the beginning, that's what I thought too. Like I sympathize with the chaos. Like it kind of wasn't their fault. They're manifested by men and stuff, and I even posed a question to somebody who was like who loved like the Imperium side, and I said, so how does that make the Imperium the good guys? And it's just like, well, it depends on how you look at things. It's like how you see things kind of thing. It's like, what perspective are you on?
I will take the hot take, and none of the sides are the good guys. Everyone is the bad guys.
No. Nurgle is the best one, guys. Next to orcs.
I mean, chaos is like...
But they're just living. They didn't have a choice. Like, they were manifested by people.
I mean, that doesn't make them the good guys. It just makes them, like, maybe less... less at fault.
Yes, yes.
You have to be like, okay, Nurgle goes around just like torturing billions with plagues and suffering.
Torture? It's more like feeding, like, here, try my contagion.
If someone was like, hey, here's an awful disease that's going to kill you, you would be like, oh, thank you for the gift.
Nurgle blessings.
But that's what, there is no good, like, actually they did a good job with like Tau. Because it was always somewhat ambiguous if they were like truly evil.
Yeah, like for the greater good. And...
Yeah. The latest codex talks about like how they're like propagandists and it's all this like giant...
Confirmed.
Yeah, like they talk about how like the ethereals just like brainwash people with like constant like propaganda and messaging, and like misinformation is like the norm in the Tau Empire, and
so they're kind of like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, where like the ethereals control everything. And like, you know, you have other like races living in the Tau Empire, but like the Tau sit as like, you know, the first citizens, and you know, all the castes are basically like enslaved to the ethereals, so the ethereals just can go do whatever they want.
Scary.
So yeah, that's one of those like, nobody's good. They're all bad.
But there will always be that argument and that question that's always asked.
I mean, you know, if you look at Space Marines, they're always like, oh, duty and honor and, you know, faith in the Emperor, and like that sounds all nice, but then it's like the Imperium itself is not happy. It's not a happy place for folks.
It's just they're just by the orders of some other person.
Well, even so, 40K, it has kind of that Dune inspiration. There's no computers. So, like, servitors, everything is a human brain. So you have, like, you know, if you go to an Imperium prison, you know, you don't spend a lot of time there. You're usually, like, lobotomized and turned into a servitor. Or, you know, you're turned into a door handle or something. Like,
for real?
Yeah, like, well, any,
you're
like,
a door handle?
Well, think about, like, any of those skulls you see, like, in any of the video games or any of the, like, pictures, all those skull, like, door handles and everything, that was a person.
True. Congratulations, you're a doorknob.
Right? Or you're, you know, the
Thank
thing
you for your
that
service.
makes the elevator go up and down.
Wow.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind.
I mean, there's like some machine spirits, but
yeah,
the vast majority of things are run by like human brains.
Crazy.
So yeah, no, the Imperium, not happy. So no, it's kind of we've been kind of like talking about this, but like talking about the setting, talking
Mm-hmm.
about, all these different factions and like how they interact with each other. And that's kind of what I think makes it such escapism, is like everything is bad. It's a grim, dark future. Like
Mm-hmm.
there
Mm-hmm.
is no happiness, there's no goodness. And I feel like that almost is what gives you that outlet to explore it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, you know what? No matter what's going on in your own life, it's not this bad.
So be happy.
Like,
But I think I think my empathetic side always wanted to find the good, and I think that's where I found Nurgle. Is like, he just wants to garden, he just wants to fertilize, he just wants to be happy.
I'm sure Nurgle was nice when he was the like god of life and like renewal, and then, the Eldar and orcs and humanity kind of made that bad.
Yeah. So what I've kind of gathered is 40K is kind of like that. Like somebody was kind of good, or like say Primarch or God. They were kind of good once until someone else screwed them over.
I don't know if the Emperor was ever good. His whole his whole goal was just like the survival of humanity. It wasn't necessarily like to do good things or like provide humanity with anything good.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Great Crusades, like what starts the whole Horus heresy is just like the Emperor is just like, you know what, it's time, go purge the galaxy of everything.
Right.
But I'm not going to tell any of you guys why.
Yeah, see, I don't like that. I don't like that he kept things from people.
Like,
even from his sons. Like, come on, just tell them the truth, or like at least stop with the half truths.
How much of Magnus's story would have been different if the Emperor was just like, hey, the warp is full of like sentient creatures. Don't mess with it. Don't touch it. And also, don't come talking to me. I'm working on something important. Like, you would have avoided half the heresy.
Yep, Magnus did nothing wrong, but Emperor did
a lot of
everything
things
wrong. I've always said that, like, Magnus not doing nothing, he did that wrong. Like, he should have just done nothing. But he did that wrong.
There is a certain amount of, like, Magnus fully admits that he knows so much less than the Emperor, and then every time he's just like, but the Emperor's wrong about this. He's like, my father keeps secrets from me and understands this better than I do, but also my opinion is important.
Yeah, and I will keep secrets from my father.
Right? Like, all of the Primarchs do things that are wrong. Like, that's annoyingly except Gulliman. That is, like, part of what makes him so irritating. It's like he doesn't do anything wrong. He's just, like, general good boy all the time.
Mm-hmm. Whereas people want to find that fault in him.
Well, it's just like, how are you, like, he's just, like, so just duty all the time. He's just, like, duty and responsibility to death.
And that's his fault.
Right? Like, and that is supposed to be his fault, but it's just like, but then things bad don't really happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Magnus makes, like, a few mistakes, and Lehman Rush just comes and destroys him.
Well, like, the Ultramarines, it's kind of like, the symbol is like a horseshoe, so he's pretty much has, like, a horseshoe up his butt.
He does. What is, one of the Heresy novels, he is, like, fighting on a spaceship, gets launched into space, and then, like, survives re-entry into the atmosphere.
Just because.
Just because he can.
Yeah.
Like, because that's what Gulliman can do.
Bobby
Whereas,
G.
like, Lorgar, like, gets a paper cut and never gets over it.
My daddy gave me this paper cut.
Korax is like, man, I was in prison for a few years. I'm never going to emotionally recover from this. Gulliman's like, literally the worst things could happen to me, but I'll be fine because I have plot armor.
Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about the lore. Where's some places that people can find this lore?
Well, we kind of talked about that. So looking at the codexes, the rule books, Black Libraries, a huge part of it. And I think even just like talking to other people, talking to other players, like people kind of interact with the lore in their own way. And that's kind of what's exciting to talk about. It is like rather than being like, oh, let's talk about this thing that we both understand, it's like, hey, what do you know? And I'll tell you what I know, and we'll share.
What do you think you know? And I'll tell you what I think I know.
Right?
Or like, I see a lot with Blood God. He watches a lot of YouTube and a lot of people on there sharing their interpretation of the lore as well. So that's a good. Or
do you have any hot recommendations?
From what I can tell, Voldemort is really fun to listen to. He has a great voice. He adds these stories. I think they're his own. Like, he scripts his own. He doesn't read off the internet. I hear Luton is really great. Other lore people, or even like how I recommend, or said earlier, just finding people on, say, Instagram that have their own style of lore and they share artwork and stuff like that. It's, again, a vast organism within itself. Like, we keep talking about like how Warhammer the game is an organism, and then the painting is like its own organism, like the community, and now like the lore is its own. Like, this Warhammer game, just, if you try to think about it and you try to understand it in its entirety, like, I think your head will explode.
It's too many nurglings. It's too many nurglings.
Not enough. I'm just putting it out there.
Trying to fit 30 nurglings in a basket that only fits 5.
Make it work.
They will fit.
Yeah. If it sits, it fits. Or if it fits, it sits.
Dude, nurglings, I thought nurglings just were. I feel like they're just balls. I don't know. In my mind, they're like cats almost. You just stack them on top of each other.
Yeah.
Just like the grossest kittens. Well, I feel like we're getting to that time where we maybe take on some listener questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's some advice for someone who's new to the painting scene?
I guess I'll take this one.
Well, yeah, that's not going to be me. To help them not get easily discouraged.
Yes, it's tough when you do scroll on Instagram or any of the social media, and you do see these extravagant models, but keep in your mind and repeat to yourself that they also started somewhere once. They didn't wake up and it was that model painted there, but there's always many avenues to get to that point. And now with the beauty of this technology and social media, you can learn a lot from each other. There's lots of people sharing very easy tips and tricks to get you to where you want to go. And if you're new, like brand new to the painting scene, listen to the advice. Like, if people are sharing to try a wet palette, try it out. And that's just the key, is just trying it out. Other people are going to tell you to do it. Just try it, like, and find your own groove. Like, everybody's going to be a little bit different. I do say try the wet palette, but some people like a dry palette. It's just finding your own groove. But if you're new to it, just slap some paint on it. You'll find what works and what doesn't.
Battle ready's battle ready, right?
Yep.
And our next question is, what's your dream project?
Mm-hmm. So last week we were kind of asked a similar question, but like I said,
I think this is you can go anyway. So last week it was like your hobby holy grail. This could be broader.
True. And obviously we have more than one dream in our life, so you can have more than one dream project. And last week I did say the sisters, but my other dream project, I'll let you answer and I'll think about it.
So my dream project isn't a hobby related project, but I always wanted to do one of those like big giant like 10, 15,000 point games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I always wanted to do one of those like all day, just like huge, like apocalypse style, like
I was gonna ask,
monster
like,
game.
so how would it be apocalypse game, or would you actually play it in the 40K setting?
Ooh,
Like, are you
I
going through the
don't.
phases, or are you rolling the d6, or what kind of game system are you playing this in?
I mean, I guess we'll have to kind of see with 10th, because at this point, I don't think I'm gonna do it in the next 2 weeks.
That's
So I guess
true.
we'll see what's available in the near future. But yeah, you know what? I don't even necessarily care about how the like structure of it works. I just think like one of those like the type of game that has titans and it doesn't feel weird. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those like big spectacle games that doesn't have to make sense, and it doesn't have to be super balanced, but just like big narrative stompy stomp, see what happens.
Now, would you want this with a group of people or just you versus someone?
I think at that point you'd have to have a few people on both sides just to like make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're talking like even a 10,000 point game, like that's just a lot of models to move.
Mm-hmm.
And it would take forever with just like two people doing it.
Yeah. I think we've played 4,000 points on stream, and it was an 8-hour ordeal.
Yeah.
Then, like, near the end, you get really loopy.
So it's like, yeah, just for like sake of sanity, I feel like you'd have to have like a group involved with doing it, but I feel like that could be an absolute blast.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you kind of inspired me for my answer. Obviously, like, when I think of dream projects, I'm like, oh, what would I want to paint or build? But yes, like, it doesn't have to just be hobby related. And so this has been something that is in my mind and I've always kind of wanted to do, but it would almost be in the style of, I don't know if you know Anthony Bourdain. He did Parts Unknown. And it's kind of like, I would love to go around the world and meet other hobbyists and gamers and kind of just see how their culture in their day-to-day life settings are and how Warhammer kind of intertwined with that. Like, obviously the food here on the East Coast is different from the West Coast or in Asia. And what kind of lunch do they take to a Warhammer tournament, or how do they approach a Warhammer tournament, and just kind of that kind of style, like that kind of project, and just see what Warhammer is like, not just in America or Canada or the UK that we've normally see, but see it where maybe if it's up in Iceland or down in Australia or Argentina or just different parts of the world. I just want to see that.
That sounds really cool. That's better than mine. You see, you're always one-upping me.
No.
Your dreams are better than mine, Nurgle.
No,
but that's really cool. I love that, like a world of like Warhammer tour almost, like
exactly.
Like see how like Japan plays Warhammer versus like Italy versus France and Africa and Australia, and that'd be really cool.
And their struggles, like there's gonna be places like along the equator that can't prime their models in the dead of the heat. So like just finding like how do they approach the whole community and the hobby and the gaming.
I mean, in parts of Australia, you're probably get to the point that the miniatures melt, so that's a whole new hobbying strategy there.
And I wonder if that's ever happened where it's like people have left their models in the car and then they come back and it's just like, well, I guess I got a bunch of spawn.
That must happen in like Texas and like Australia and like Mexico, like just hot places where
Yeah. Whereas, like, for
Well,
us,
let us know.
we wouldn't
Let us know,
have.
folks.
Yeah, exactly. But for us, like, we wouldn't experience that. But we have very cold winters, so we can't prime during the winter. So it's just a kind of like understanding other people's struggles and their adaptations to the hobby.
That sounds like a beautiful project.
Maybe one day you and I can go on a carpet ride with my dream.
There we go. That's if we become giant content creators, we'll travel the world exploring Warhammer.
Giant. It'll be battle suits. Yeah.
I'll walk around in a crisis suit just so people will notice me.
Check out my railgun, guys.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to Chaos Divided, and you can find us on social media at Nurgle_Snurgle and at BlushingNoiseMarine. And
How many
until
followers
next
do
week,
you have now?
59. I'm moving up.
Damn, you're almost at 60.
You know what? Maybe I should cut it up at 69 this time.
Oh.
It'd be nice.
Oh. Nice. Ciao for now, guys.
Bye.
Mwah.